I see my red doors and I want it painted black. Maybe then I'll fade away and not have to face the facts. It's not easy facing up when you hold what is like. No more will my green seagull turn a deeper blue. I could not force it, this thing happening to you. If I look hard enough into the setting sun, my love will not commit before the morning comes. I want to see you fading, fading, fading black. I want to see you fading, fading, fading black. I want to see you fading, 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 fading black. I want to see you fading, 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 fading black.
Evening and welcome to Paranormal Into the Night, right here on the Late Late Horror Show YouTube channel, across the country, across the globe, across the universe. Who knows? Maybe an ancient alien has it on an iPhone or something, and is taking it off. Anyways, I am Dino. I'm your host, and it's been a while since I've talked to Gary Wayne. Geez, I think it's been 3 years or so. But I'm happy to have him here. Gary Wayne, he's the author of the Genesis 6 Conspiracy. But we are going to be talking about fallen angels, vampires, Nephilim, and then we'll get into his book and all kinds of other things. But I really want to get into this fallen angels and vampires mythos. So as always, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good stuff. Everybody in the chat, I see you all. Tracy, Cryptomaria, Connie Clary, Angel, JLR, Bubba. Yeah, I see you, Bubba. Modets, that's right. RTN is here. Everybody, you guys all know who you are. We got a good crowd in here, that's for sure. Thank you all for being here. If you guys got a question, please be sure to capitalize it so it stands out. You could always super chat it and I'll go back and I'll see it. But if you do really have a question, be sure to put it in all caps just so I see it. And I'll try because we're going to be covering a lot of things. And I'll bring you in here in a minute there, Gary. He's waiting alongside here. I like this little restream thing, with the video, bringing people in and all that. It's like they're in the waiting room waiting to come on, But I got to tell you guys right off the bat, it's a controversial kind of subject matter. Anything dealing with the Bible or religion in general, people could get upset when you start talking about certain things. I would say just keep an open mind. Listen to what we got to say. If you don't like it, I guess leave. But there is some discretion there on my part to let you guys know. Whether you take it as entertainment, that's okay too. You're listening to us, so whatever. If it's a show, if you're learning something different from this, whatever. But so that is it. That's it. Let's have some fun. Let's talk to Gary Wayne, and here he is. Let me bring him in here real quick. Gary Wayne, let me make sure. Oh, geez. See, why isn't this working? It's like I got to take me out of the picture and bring you on. Why is that? Let me see. First time using this,
part
guys.
Of the conspiracy.
Right? Oh, geez, we're going there already. Maximize. There we go. I guess I'm going to have to change from you to me when I'm talking. But Gary Wayne, how are you doing, my friend?
Very good. Sometimes the voice, when somebody's talking, the screen will go back and forth. We'll see what happens. So, and also, I was listening to you talk to the people in the chat. So, yeah, by all means, I'd love taking questions from the chat room. And I am a Christian contrarian, but do not worry about that. You might be amazed at what's actually written in the Bible, and you might be amazed at how much I know about polytheism and the occult and secret societies and a whole bunch of different things that I can go pretty deep on. So I think we ought to have a lot of fun with what we're talking about, because we're all trying to just learn more about where we are, why we're here, and where we're going.
Oh yeah, for sure. The thing is, and I'm going to have to do this until I figure it out, you guys, a switch from me to Gary to me to Gary until I figure it out. I should be able to split the screen up, but it's not working. I'm pressing it. But anyways, yeah, the whole thing that got me into this subject matter. Well, you know what? The people on the channel know that there are perks for channel memberships, and I've done 2 shows with you before, Gary, like 4 years ago, and we talked about secret societies and stuff like that. So those are up for the channel members, so they get exclusive access to the back catalog of all the Paranormal Into the Night shows that I did in the past. So it's really cool. But what got me into this, and I thought of you immediately, Gary, was this new show that's on Netflix. It's called Midnight Mass, and it's done by Mike Flanagan. You probably like, who? I don't know who that is, but he's done some things, and he's very, very interesting. It deals with the fallen angels, vampire mythos, and it's just a very complex storyline. You know, he goes into the religious fundamentalism, the ancient blood curse, but where we should probably start is where all of this kind of begins, is in heaven, right? I mean, this is where this all begins, right, Gary?
Well, it doesn't really matter what perspective people are coming at it from whatever culture, whatever religion. It goes right back into prehistory, maybe even to super prehistory. And this is about a fallout that takes place in another dimension, which is known biblically as heaven. And it has to do with a rebellion of angels that become known as the gods of polytheism. And so you get a breakdown of religions that are out there. One is polytheist, which is worshipers of the angels and the multiple angels that are in the pantheon. And then you have monotheism, and there's a couple different versions of monotheism that are out there as well. So this is an ancient rebellion that is led by an individual, or not really provided his name other than Satan or the proud angel. The secret societies will call him Lucifer, or the great architect of the universe. And just as we get Lucifer in the King James Version Bible, that's not really his name. It's a name that's been inserted. It's an Italian word that goes back to Venus and words associated with Venus for a Hebrew word that is Hail El, Heylel. And typically El is the sort of the compounded second half of a word for a name for an angel. So Michael or Gabriel or Azazel or Uriel, all those, all the sort of famous sort of angels that might be known out there, they'll end their name with El. And if people want to know a little bit later on or in the chat why Shemiyaza doesn't, I can explain that for you as well. That might make some sense to you. So this is about the rebellion that takes place, and you have this sort of perpetual ongoing battle between the forces that are following the rebellious ones and those who are loyal to Christians would call the God of the universe, the omnipotent God. And in polytheism, they believe in something called dualism. So this is a perpetual war, whereas this only goes on for a limited set period of time, as a monotheist would look at it. But what it does do is sort of connect people into where we are today, that this is the yin and the yang. This is the good force and the evil force. This is all of those types of dualistic good versus evil aspect that one never gains an upper hand. So polytheist belief will suggest that the God of the Bible is no more powerful than the gods in the pantheon. And And that this is actually the God of the Bible is the one that goes rogue from amongst all of the other fallen angels, as Christians would understand it, but the gods of the pantheon, and sort of tried to usurp control over the physical universe and other areas as well. So you
Well, who are
have
the
this
who
rebellion
are the
that's
Gary? I'm
taking
sorry.
place that leads. I'm sorry, I was just going to finish up and say,
Okay,
and
go
then
ahead.
after that, we get the ripples of everything that sort of comes afterwards.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm sorry and there's a delay here too that whatever. I like to interrupt quite often when I hear something. The gods of the
Yeah.
pantheon. I would like you to explain that a little bit more, because like what I'd like to know, and we got a lot of this is probably going over people's heads. They're going like, what is this? What is he talking about? Oh my God. But I mean, as simple as we can explain it, like the fallen, these fallen angels,
Yeah.
up in heaven, who are these angels? Like I'm just trying to wrap my head around where this all began. Where did God create the race of you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the angels are created before the physical universe, and they're actually there at the creation of the universe. And the angels are part of what they call the host of heaven, which is the Hebrew word for Saba, which means an army. So you have rank and hierarchy within this army of angels and different orders of angels. So you're going to have like dunamis and which is basically meaning powers, and exousia, and I'll put them into English words: principalities, dominions, powers, mighty ones, seraphim, cherubim, ophanim, archangels, and more. There are a whole order of ranking that are amongst these angels. And so when you look at a pantheon, when I talk about that, that's sort of the hierarchy of the main angels that are organizing that particular religion. And they seem to be, people sort of understand these pantheons as being different polytheist religions around the world, but they're really not. So you basically have a ranking set of goddess and god in a pantheon, and you've got parent gods and you've got offspring gods, and we can get into that. I wouldn't really spend a lot of time on it, other than the fact that if the parent gods died or disappeared, then the offspring gods or the lower gods would rise up to take that place in that sort of army sort of setting. So you have mainly 7 in a head pantheon of gods, and they're typically the same angels and gods that are talked about in the 7 angels in Gnosticism as they are in Taoism or Taoism. All of the pantheons around the world with the main 7 angels and all the other angels below, they are the same angels, just with different vernacular names. So you have, as the offspring gods after the flood, you have like Isis as the female goddess, the mother goddess, and then you have her husband as being Osiris. And so if you move that over to let's say the Greek pantheon, you've got as Osiris's equal would be Zeus, and Poseidon is his brother, which is more of a god of the water or the underworld. And if you move that over to the Sumerian pantheon, you've got Enki as that main god that's probably more equivalent with Zeus, and Enlil is probably more equivalent with Zeus than Enki is, because Enki is more equivalent with Poseidon, if I said that incorrectly. But you sort of get the understanding that you get the same types of angels, the same type of gods with the same responsibilities in all the different pantheons around the world. And that's not a coincidence. It's because it is reflecting both before the flood and after the flood, that there was this culture and civilizations that were dominated by these religions, dominated and worshipped these gods within those cultures. And so when we understand the pantheon as being gods or biblically as fallen angels, then all of a sudden things start to make sense, and you start to see connections that most people would overlook. So then it becomes that lens that you look through prehistory through or early history as to whether or not you're viewing it through a polytheist lens of events or monotheistic lenses for the events. So it's really helps to have that understanding of who the pantheon are, and that they look at within the pantheon as the God of the Bible being real, but being sort of their enemy, right? So you've got the rival, depending on which side you're on. One's going to be good, one's going to be bad. And that's, again, that polytheist and that monotheist lens.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, all very interesting stuff. I think one of the things I kind of wanted to get into, and I'll say it here, and hopefully you can remember and try to, like, one of the basic things are you said the angels started, and you said 7 of them, only 7.
Well, there are 7
The
major
original
ones in the
fallen.
pantheon, right? Yeah.
Okay, so
What's that?
they're the original fallen angels.
No, there was a lot more
Okay.
than that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
like-
let's get to that. I'm kind of want to get to that part of it where everything, fell apart in heaven and they fell to the earth. And
Mhm.
because I want to do the tie-in with the vampire mythos, when it comes to
Mhm.
what happened and why these angels or watchers, whoever they call them, the watchers too, have gone out of God's grace and came to earth to reap and sow or whatever. And yeah, I mean, the war took place, and how did they end up? I mean, if you believe in the point that they've become, or some of them have become vampires, right? I mean, possibly, right? And other creatures, demons.
I wouldn't say the gods have become vampires. No.
Well,
I
no,
would
the fallen
say
angels.
their creations would, in a lot of cases, have become vampires. And you can trace
Okay.
the history back to different kinds of witches and night witches and vampires that might go back to, Lilith in a matriarchal sort of perspective. But typically a vampire is different than a fallen angel, and it's more of an allegory for an offspring of the angels, which would be a demigod that was exercising power on earth for the gods. And what happens with, well, actually, I'll let you sort of see where you want to go from there, but I just want to make sure that we're going to talk about these things as God-like, but they're not the fallen angels.
Okay. Yeah, because what I came to believe from what I was looking up, researching, and even from the show is that some of the fallen angels actually ended up becoming what you would call, so it's very complex to even say vampire, but to give the moniker vampire is what we're doing. You know what I mean? A creature that
Sure.
has been thrown to earth, and even Lucifer, who was banned and from heaven and basically thrown aside, thrown to the darkness, and all these things that you hear. So none of the original fallen angels, you're saying, technically ended up in that kind of vampire mythos, that were the offspring of these fallen angels that turned
Offspring or
into.
creation by other methods. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so I guess I would like to know, like, what technically happened with these fallen angels
Sure.
after the big war, and where it ties into maybe some of them creating the vampires and stuff. So
Yeah. And so when we look at fallen angels, just
Mhm.
to clarify what some of the distinctions that we're making here is that they're immortal, so they can't die. Whereas in the vampire mythos, you have vampires that are requiring the drinking of blood to give them their immortality, and powers and better mental cognizance. So angels don't need that. They're above that in terms of needing that as a requirement to have immortality. And so the fallen angels, what they did was when they rebelled and before the flood, and you can look at that as a recreation of the earth from the war that destroyed the flood that would have happened between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, or just as a lot of Christians believe that day one begins sort of the history of the earth. But during that antediluvian period before the flood, after the 6 days of creation, you have the watchers that are governing the earth. And they are the head gods, and they interact with humankind throughout the earth and all the different cultures. So whether or not one looks at the history of that says there's 4 civilizations or 7 civilizations or 9 or 11 or 13, and I've heard all of those numbers. They're the ones that are being worshipped in all of these civilizations around the world. And then they create offspring, demigods, so that when you're looking at, let's say in Greek mythology, Hercules, he is the offspring of a Zeus and a human female, or Poseidon is going to, before the flood, is going to produce 12 demigod kings for the Atlantis Empire from Clymene, who's a human female. So these are part human, part god. Depending on which culture you're looking at, it could be 2/3 god, 1/3 human, as in the Sumerian civilization, or it could be 50% god and 50% human. And they are created immortal through the spirit that they get from the fallen angel as that god. And they're the ruling representatives on earth. Unfortunately, though, they don't all do good things. They turn, in a lot of cases, evil and become hubris. And even in the polytheist accounts, they rebel against the gods. And so they're killed by the gods, or their bodies are killed by the gods, but their spirit doesn't die. So these become the demon spirits. And the demon spirits require bodies to interact in the physical world. So you get a merging of ideologies of the undead, which technically could be a demon, and with the vampire mythos. And what the Nephilim were doing and the Rephaim were doing to extend their lives was to drink blood and take the life of other beings to give them that sort of life. And that's where you get this melding into this sort of recreation of what their initial sort of vampires were doing. Now the gods, in physical, when they took a physical body, which they did on Earth, they did also drink blood as well as part of the rituals. But they weren't drinking that blood to keep their immortality, because they're just immortal beings. I mean, the body might die, but they could recreate another body, so they can continue to look as they want, because they're changeling individuals. They had the ability to create physical bodies as a dwelling place for their spirit in the physical universe. The demigods weren't able to do that once their bodies died. So the vampires are sort of that sort of conflation of this whole sort of ideology. And when you get Dracula, who is sort of the key character that vampires are based on, as we understand them today, you get a individual that's a classic archetypical figure that is from the Tuatha De Danann, which are a giant race that escapes from Tartarus after the flood, after the rebellion, after the flood. Then they escaped into Scythia, and he takes his bloodlines as, and based on Vlad the Impaler, who is called Dracula, and the A on Dracul means son of Dracula, Dracul, which is a title, and that is the word for dragon or seraphim angel, and which is what the Watchers were for the most part, were seraph and serpent-faced angels. And he takes his bloodlines back to the Tuatha De Danann that come out of Scythia, and he is a sort of a classic noble Celt, so to speak, a classic archetypical Tuatha De Danann. He's got pale skin, He's got hazel eyes. He's got red hair. He has an allergy to sunlight. He is educated at the School of Solomon in Vienna into the ancient mysteries. And he's a blood drinker throughout these rituals. And this is who that character basically is based on, is Vlad the Impaler, who takes his genealogies back to the Tuatha De Danann. And in their mythos of their bloodline, he is going to take their genealogy back through to Hercules and the Agrathy of the Scythians, and back to an angel that they would call by two different titles, one being Tamiel, and the other one, which is listed in the book of Enoch as one of his other titles, is Kezidiah. And so everything sort of connects back to how we understand vampires today through that mythos that was built on top of Vlad the Impaler.
So Vlad the Impaler, you can trace back his bloodline to one of the fallen angels then, right?
Yeah, that's what they do. That's their genealogies. Whether or not that's true or not, I'll leave that for other people to digest. But that's what they, and what's important, it's what they believe. And actually, Prince Charles takes his genealogies back to Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, we talked about this before on Secret Society. So when I talked to you about that, so I do remember you talking about that. But definitely the giants then, the Nephilim that you brought up, those are the offspring of the angels, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and they're known by different names all around the world. So they're known as the heroes or the titans, the earthborn titans in Greek mythology. They're known as the Anunnaki, earthborn in Sumerian. Yeah. They are the Xibalba in the Popol Vuh. They are the Styria and Azuras of the India Indian history of the subcontinent of India and the Miocene, on and on and on. They have names all over the world because in all of the civilizations you had the creation of these giants.
Well, I mean, so let's just get down to it. Let me ask you, are there vampires on this planet right now? I mean, what has become of the bloodlines? Have they has most of that just gone away? I mean, the fallen angels are still around, right? They can't die. They're somewhere either on the planet, right? So what's going on there? Are they in hiding? Are they not birthing more creatures, or are they still doing this?
So you have a couple of groups of the fallen angels. I'll get to their offspring in a minute. Okay. One are the ones who were initially involved in the creation of this demigod race. And after the flood, these angels and the ones who were creating the worst amount of crimes were put into the abyss. And again, they're put into the abyss in multiple religions. So the Gnostics, especially, it's really described well in Pistis Sophia. It actually describes all of these different kinds of watchers and things that are in this abyss. And giants again show up after the flood. So they either survive the flood or there's another incursion. And if there was another incursion of fallen angels creating these giants, they would have gone as well. But not all the angels were locked into the abyss. And in fact, there are, as I said, there's millions and millions of these angels. We get a number of 10,000 by 10,000, which could be an allegorical number in the Bible. That would be 100 million, and we're told a third of them rebelled. So that's at least 33 million. In other accounts, their numbers are uncountable. So there's a lot of angels. But the angels stopped shortly after the flood, and I think after the second incursion, with those impassioned angels being put into the abyss, gods like Baal and Zeus and Osiris, who all created demigods after the flood, were put into the abyss. And the fallen angels that aren't in there, in the abyss, they're still around. And they could, at any point in time, create demigods again, but it's against the laws of creation, as the Book of Enoch talks about. So the consequence of that is you're going to do that, you're going to go into the abyss. I do expect that these fallen angels would try and recreate these beings the closer we get to what Christians would call the end time, and the rendezvous with destiny, where you have the forces of good and evil meeting together, and that they would create these beings again for that end time period. Now, giants after the flood, they seem to have had a significant difficulty in reproducing. So if you get into the Ugaritic texts, for example, where the Raphaim, which is the root word in the Semitic languages for the Rephaim that show up in the Bible, they are actually doing fertility rituals to Astaroth and Baal, so that Baal is going to recreate demigods because they're having problems reproducing after the flood. And so they're going to have to intermarry with humans for a couple of reasons. One, to be able to not, be sort of disappear from the face of the earth. And the other thing is that if you get too much intermarriage, you get blood diseases. And it's even looked at on in that way today, like with Habsburg disease or Habsburg jaw disease or hemophiliac disease from too much intermarriage. Right. And a whole bunch of other ones. So they need that outside blood. So what you see is a slow erosion of the size and how long that they live after the flood and what they looked like, because they would have originally looked a lot like their parents. And so whether it's Osiris or it's Zeus, they're originally depicted as serpent gods. Those are those heavenly dragons with 6 wings, the seraphim angels, the watchers, as they're called. And that's why you have gods and you have kings before the flood, and then for a while after the flood, that are closely associated with that dragon and serpentine description. And if you Google Akhenaten, that's over 1,000 years after the flood, and he's still got those serpentine looks. He's got this long protruding chin, these high cheekbones, these large wraparound eyes that would have glowed, and this elongated head, these thin lips, and you really think you're looking at a serpent at that point in time. But over time, the human interaction with the genes and the bloodlines starts to bring them more to our size and to our looks. Now, a lot of people think they have a changeling capability. Maybe they do. Maybe they inherited that. But it seems to me that the bloodlines are the ones who were ruling the world. They were the Rephaim kings. They were the ones that were running the whole elite society. They ran the religion, they ran the education, they ran the army, and the humans who were initially smaller were their servants. And so they set up that feudal society. And so that's the bloodlines that come down in the royal families today. That is still basically that nobility elite that is kind of running the world today. You don't have all of the kings on the thrones. They're just in the background. So when you get into the secret societies, you need to understand that above the Rosicrucians, which are already higher than the Illuminati and which are already higher than the Freemasons, you have the Royal Masonic orders, which are the pure bloodlines. And they're the ones that are controlling things and sit more in the background. So if you see families like the Rothschilds, that's not part of the 13 families that are at the top in the West. They are visibly seen, so they're not the ones that are running things. And the Rothschilds, they actually changed their name to Rothschild from the Bauer family. They're funded after the fall of the Templars to replace the banking arm of the Templars outside the Catholic Church, and took the name Rothschild when they set up the London Bank in about 1810 to 1812. But everybody thinks they're one of the 13 families. Well, they're not. They're just, they've been intermarried into it. They're important, but they're not the Anjou. They're not the Plantagenet. They're not the St. Clair. They're not the real bloodlines that are running things.
Yeah, so that bloodline though is still out there. I mean, it's still going.
Yeah, and within those adept rituals, they still do blood drinking. it's still part of that whole ritual about trying to give themselves better cognizant advantages and longer life. But it's a significant part of the rituals of the religion at the adept level.
Yeah, blood don't taste very well, but anyways, so when you get down to it, though, the whole mythos of vampires, you believe it is a thing, though. I know I keep prodding you with it, but it is a thing, right? I mean, not that I want vampires to come visit me or nothing like that, but I am very intrigued with that. And like I said, that connection to
where that comes from a physical aspect of blood drinking sort of monsters, and Lilith is kind of part of that from a Sumerian perspective. These are physical creatures that are created that are different than the Nephilim. They're a little bit different kind, and they would go out and do horrible things as part of the terrible ones to humankind. And so they would drink blood. And that's the Upiers. And it's, it does mix back into the Tuatha De Danann, but more sort of ceremonial as in the blood drinking, as in the Oberons. So when you have Upier, understand that Uber, Uberon, Overon, Overlord is all part of the same etymological set of words. And we see that come up as a crossover in the allegories in Midsummer's Night Dream with King Oberon, who is the king of the fairies, and the fairies are Tuatha De Danann as one of the 4 groups of fairies. And you have him being married to Titania, which is basically saying a mother goddess or a female demigod titan, right? So of the Titanides, as they're called in Greek mythology. So you do have some of those creatures that were there in the past, and they're very much related to like the demonic physical presence that the incubus and those type of creatures take when they take a physical form on the earth. So there's something that are a little bit unique from the Nephilim.
Yeah, I was going to say too. And you know what? If anybody wants to grab Gary Wayne's book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, the link is in the description to Amazon. So please feel free. It's a very interesting book, and I know you've got another one coming out, but we'll talk about that in a few. But yeah, I mean, it's. I almost wonder if a lot of these creatures that we see nowadays, even though it's more rare, it's a lot more talked about in the Bible, but we still get these appearances of, like, say, the Mothman and other creatures like that. I wonder if that has anything to do with the bloodlines passed along, and we're just turning it into something that it's not. Maybe not.
There's probably a little bit more to it.
Okay.
There's probably a little bit more to it. So, and Mothman's a little different, but I think what would be kind of akin to the Nephilim would be something like the Dogman mythos.
Okay.
And if you look at in the Egyptian pantheon, you have a jackal god that's part of the parent gods named Anubis. And he actually produced offspring that looked like him. And these were warrior type of Nephilim. They were dog-headed people. And there was actually a city that, where you can call it Dog City if you want, but Sinopolis was the name of the city, which is sort of part of the name for the, Cephalles of the dog mythos, which is sort of the technical term for it. And they show up in basically all cultures. You have a god that's worshipped by the Avim in the Bible named Anibaz, and he is the barking god. So he's a god like the jackal god in the Egyptian pantheon. And so they created those kinds of beings, and you still get people saying that they're seeing dog men even to this day.
Oh yeah.
whether or not that's true, but the amount of sightings, if you were to look on a map at how many sightings there would be of dogmen, and there's a history that is recorded of these beings that is outside the Bible. Most of the historians, right up to past 1000 AD, were recording these dogmen. So I don't think
they're still doing it
disappeared.
today. Yeah, definitely.
So,
I mean, how about Bigfoot?
Bigfoot, there's some gods that are, in the Indian culture, that subcontinent of India, that have sort of ape-like sort of descriptions, right? So Bigfoot is kind of related to the Nephilim concept. They have shiny, beady red eyes and different other colored eyes, and depending on the account, they're hairy like the Nephilim were. They're large, but they're not as large as the Nephilim. They're intelligent. They're connected to the elementals or the little people. They're connected to caves and portals, just as Nephilim are connected to portals. But they communicate. They tap on things, and there's even some DNA that's been found in humans that they try, and a lot of people say would be part of the Bigfoot. So I think what they are is that similar kind of creation that the gods were creating, and they created all sorts of beings. If you look at recorded polytheist history, whether or not it's the Chimera or King Habada, which is a Chimera type of individual that comes out of the Epic of Gilgamesh, or if you have the centaurs, and on and on and on about all of these creatures, and so they're either created with DNA manipulation or through sexual copulation. Typically, how it comes out of prehistory is through some sort of sexual copulation that creates these things. And you also have like the lion men, right? You have the lion men of Moab and Gad in the Bible, but in polytheist history, you have gods like Mahis or Nergal and Sekhmet and Bast, who produce offspring that look just like them. And so when you look at Black Panther as a superhero movie, that's why you have that goddess Bast that's in there, because that's the goddess who created the panther cat type of Nephilim that whole superhero character is based on. And so they use the actual root to that within the movie. So you've got all sorts of different creations, and Bast would have created almost unlimited kinds of creatures that are really bizarre and weird, and kind of equivalent to who Tiamat is, which is a Leviathan or serpent-like god out of the Sumerian pantheon, who creates all sorts of weird things like scorpion beings that have the ability to destroy the world. And if anybody's ever read Revelation 9 and what follows Abaddon and Apollyon out of the abyss in the end time, the description of these scorpion beings are identical to what's recorded in Revelation 9. And so it's hard to imagine all of the different things that were going on. You have to put together all of the accounts of all the different cultures around the world to get sort of that understanding as to, there was a lot of different creatures. So some that were more intelligent than others, some bigger than others, and some with additional powers than others.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you why that is. I mean, why did we get such a variety of different creatures from all of these, the fallen angels? I mean, when they started to procreate with humans, both bloodlines from Seth and what was the other one? Cain, the females and the males. I mean, the fallen angels, what kind of form were they that they would create such varying degrees of creatures? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's go back to the vampire analogy and back to Dracula, and make the connection from there. So in the vampire mythos, as we understand it coming down from Dracula, you have sort of a good versus evil sort of scenario there, and the vampires are the enemies of humankind, and they prey on humankind, and they drink their blood and they kill them, and that gives them their immortality as the undead. and they're followers of the pantheon. And so they're taking their orders and reporting up the sort of hierarchical order to the fallen angels. And so the Nephilim were created as enemies of humankind. And what they're doing is we're wanting to replace humans with these demigods and to change the whole world from how it was originally created. So they were changing the DNA of humans. They were changing the DNA of all of the animals. They were changing the plant genomes. And biblically, we get an understanding of this out of the flood story, because the flood is the resolution to the creation of these giants before the flood and the damage that they had done and the crimes against humanity that they had done. And we're told that not just that the earth was full of violence, but that the violence actually were part of the Nephilim story that starts off the flood story. They're interconnected, and that the whole earth was corrupted. And that's the Hebrew word shakath. And that means destroyed, decayed, ruined, words like that, that suggests that everything on the earth, for the most part, whether it was the plant genomes or the animals or the humans, their DNA or their plant genome had been changed. And that only 8 were selected. And again, the flood story is in every culture, and it has a very similar macro level detail on it, as opposed to the micro details on it. And you have to separate the polytheist versions of human survival stories from the flood from the giant survival stories, because there's a mix of both in polytheism. Yeah. And there's only 8 that are selected by God in the Bible version who do not have that DNA, that are changed and are spiritually loyal to God. And so God also calls all the animals to the ark, the ones that he knows are representatives of the species. A kind is the poor translation for the Hebrew word that should be translated as species, into the ark, because he knows which ones haven't been corrupted. Now, what we're told is that's not the case with the living creatures in the ocean, just the ones on the earth that are destroyed. So I think to bring that sort of full scale is that these creatures were created to destroy humankind so that they wouldn't be raised in the future time to be like angels and to judge the rebellious angels for the crimes they committed against humanity and all the crimes that their creations and their offspring did against humanity. So bringing that back to the vampire scenario, humankind are the prey and the enemy, and the Christian church is also the enemy of the vampires. All of that allegory has been laced in because it's got a deeper meaning to the meaning of Dracula and the patriarchal bloodlines of the Nephilim through the dragon as the allegory, as opposed to the fairy for the matriarchal bloodline. So you have that all encapsulated in the modern vampire tales. And that's, kind of what you need to sort of look at is what is the meaning underneath the fairy tale.
Yeah, no, definitely sounds good. Yeah, and in the chat, of course, you guys, that's why I started to show off with, it's a touchy subject matter when you start talking about Bible, religion, and the past when it comes to God and angels and stuff like that. So, just have a kind conversation back and forth with each other. I saw that something went on, but yeah, just, chill. It's just a conversation. It's to have, you should be able to converse back and forth with what's going on and what people are saying. So that's all it is. But, very
it's
interesting.
Not about imposing your...
Yeah.
It's not about imposing your beliefs on other people, because you can't force people to believe anything.
All right.
But you ought to make a choice as to what you believe. And what you're looking at from prehistory is a couple different lenses. And what you're looking at as the world today is a couple of different lenses. But we ought to focus more on what our common denominators are and what's really going on and try and figure that out. But ultimately, you're going to have to figure out what you believe.
Right. Exactly. And, You did talk about manipulation of like DNA and stuff like that too, and just trying to tinker with, getting rid of the human race, basically. You know what I mean? Where do the aliens play a part in that at all? Or am I going
I think
way out?
No, you're not going way out. I think they do, and I think we're going to see that in the next decade or so, as things are moving forward with kind of formally introducing us to them. And we're going to see kinds, and these are going to be many different kinds of the angelic creations, and there will also be, the fallen angels, and they're going to be represented as, superior beings that are all united together, and you're going to need to make a choice to join them or not. And that's why it's important to figure out what you believe. And when you look at some of the creations of the fallen angels, you have like the elementals, which are at the bottom level of the hierarchical order of the fairy group, because you've got 4 different groups of fairies, as I talked about. And the elementals fall into 4 different groups. One is like the salamanders, and they are like a larger reptilian type of being. And then the 3 groups that are left are little people, is the best way to describe them. So you've got good-looking ones like Tinkerbell. You have mischievous ones that are like the leprechauns, and you got the ugly ones like the trolls and the dwarves and the gnomes, and all of these beings are created for a purpose in that hierarchy. And one of those are the gnomes that kept the genealogy, technology, and knowledge for the demigods and the gods in the physical world. And
are there still gnomes out there, Gary?
There are, and they have flying machines through portals.
Gary, I figured it out. Sorry.
Domins.
Yeah. Go ahead. I figured it out. I got the 2
videos. They kidnap people and they do experimental things on them. And I have a couple of descriptions of those fairy kidnappings and of the beings that are these beings, and they're called the gray gnomes, the gray fairies, and they are identical to the grays in the alien mythos. So they've been with us all through history, just called something different.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to see all of that come out soon. And we're going to see what a lot of people would call the new Atlantis coming about. And the new Atlantis is this era. It's really the new age in the new age religion, where you have this golden age, this new golden age as it was before the flood, when the gods walked amongst the earth with the humans, and they created the demigods, and they created all of this knowledge that we're just catching up to today with the ability to manipulate DNA that they had before, because we couldn't build things like Machu Picchu or the pyramids and on and on and on. Right. And we have evidence that their technology was greater than what we have today, but we are catching up because we're getting into the days of Noah again. And so when we have all of that technology and all of that beings that were created before the flood, we need to understand that these beings have been here all along, and they're going to reintroduce themselves as they get ready for this new age, that you have a harmony of religion, which you might know as Gnosticism, which comes out of Theosophy. Gnosticism produced Theosophy, which produced New Age with the entrance of the alien phenomena that we had since the late 40s. And it is going to re-merge with the knowledge of science, because it was designed to be that bridge, because in the beginning, science and mysticism were the same. And that's going to be united when that all comes back together. And that's what they're trying to recreate, is that new golden age.
Yeah. And somebody asked the question, where are the demons today? Where are they? Are they all in the abyss, or are there some out there still?
It's both. So in Ezekiel 32, we get some of these demons that are talking to some of the Rephaim kings and to the Pharaoh in particularly, and they're locked in the sides of the abyss. But not all the demons are in the abyss, just the worst ones were. The ones who were the terrible ones and who were slain, and their bodies didn't go to sleep because they have an immortal spirit. They're not allowed into heaven. And so they either wander the earth or in the underworld, or they went to the abyss. And so we have demons, just as we've had demon possession all throughout our history, and even in the Bible we get that. And those are the devil spirits in the New Testament, which goes back to the Greek word daemon or demon, different than the devil, which is diabolos, which is the word used for Satan. And these are the bodiless spirits that thirst for a body, because they're like in dry places looking for a place to rest. They can only rest and interact in the physical world when they suppress the host. So I think the technology that is being developed with the cloning and transhumanism is going to create what they call an oikoterion, or a dwelling place for the spirit, for these demon spirits to interact again as the technology catches up to permit that. So when you see all of the movies that are out there on consciousness transfer, that's really the allegory of what they're talking about, is being able to take these demon spirits and give them a physical body so that they can physically, integrate into the physical dimension again.
Okay. Anyways, I want to tell you again, Gary, you should watch Midnight Mass, okay? Because of the whole mythos and all that good stuff that's in there. I think you should.
I will watch it.
Yes,
yeah.
Put it on your list. But I tried my best to get that movie or that series and the fallen angels and the vampires into this, but you are just so knowledgeable with all of this stuff. I'll admit, some of it just goes over my head. I can't keep up with all of it. You've done a lot of research on all of this, and it's just subject. So interesting. Yeah. And again, check out his book in the link below. But we might as well get to like kind of let's get to the end times a little bit without trying to. I don't know if you can do it. I don't know if what's going on right now has anything to do it. I don't want to use those words that's going on, but let's talk about end times a little bit, because everybody says it's approaching. We're nearing the end times. I don't know what to believe in anything anymore. I know that the world is a little messed up. It's been for a long time. What is your take on the end times? And is it approaching?
Well, I think we can see it on the horizon. In most cultures and religions, there is this period that is talked about. They have a lot of similarities. We went through 2012, and that sort of had people scared because we entered into that new age period, right? And the thing that people have to keep in mind is that age is 2,360 years. So just because you started into that the period doesn't mean it was going to happen on that day. And that's an area where even in that age, in the age of this, is that there's going to be an apocalypse by fire. So it's a matter of when and how that is told all around the world. And so when we look at what it takes for an end time in most of this, there has to be a Messiah type of figure, whether or not it's Lord Maitreya that is in the Hindu or in the Buddhism, or it's the Mahdi in
talk about
Shia out of Islam. You've got this figure that is the one. The new Buddha is also a reference out of the East. You have this figure that is talked about to lead us into this new age, and biblically you get that as Jesus coming back and into the millennium. So you're going to hear this new age as 1,000-year reign, right? It's kind of everywhere, and in the Bible as well. And so what does it take to sort of bring that about? And what that takes to bring that about is that there has to be a coming together of the world. So globalism has to happen. And it's hard to have a universal religion, which is required, and a universal government in how we see things today, right? Those are two big stumbling
Right.
blocks that you have to get over. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's going to take some time, or it's going to take catastrophes, apocalyptic nature catastrophes, for this to happen. And or revelations of like the aliens, where in all the genre of space and alien entertainment, you have, as soon as we find out we're not alone in the universe, we come together with the world government and the same religion, and it's all
Right.
throughout that sort of genre. So there has to be things like that that are going to happen to speed that up, because there's no way this world is going to just get along together. And so you're going to have
Well,
some
amen.
wars
Yeah.
and rumors of wars. You're going to get into the birth pang period of things that kind of look like we're in the end time, but it's just sort of building that up. But we're not into the last 7 years until you have a world government and you have a world religion, and there's a 7-year covenant from a Christian perspective. And that the world will come together from a New Age perspective to have this harmonic convergence, which is required to evolve or vibrate into the next level of consciousness or into godhood, depending on how you want to look at that.
Okay. So somebody mentioned in the chat, I don't even know what it means really. Ask about, let me see, ask about word serpents today. Is that part leading up to the end times? Does that make any sense?
I'm not sure what a word serpent is. Maybe they can clarify that.
Yeah, that kind of threw me off there, Gap. So I guess if you can clarify a little bit better. So yeah. So when this happened,
what we will see is, I think we'll see the serpentine gods, the seraphim angels, the watchers.
That's what I was
show
going to
up
ask. Yeah.
as an advanced species, and they're the ones who provided all of the knowledge to humans for the most part. They provided civilization. They provided the agrarian society, and so typically that can be understood as the word as well. So that might be what the word serpent is sort of connecting there.
Okay. Oh, they're all saying world serpent, world serpent, world serpent. So
oh, the world serpent, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the Ouroboros, right? Yeah. Well, that's going to be part of that whole, symbolism that's going to come about, and that's just a serpent or a dragon clutching its tail. But in the globalist symbolism, you're going to see the earth in a lot of that symbolism that's encircled by that snake, because these are the seraphim gods who rule the earth and provided the knowledge and will continue to provide the knowledge going forward.
And the fallen angels that ended up in the abyss, the ones that will come out and during the end times, how is that even going to be possible? Like, do they got a key somewhere that they're going to unlock the door and just let themselves loose? Being funny there, but go ahead.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of attempts to release them before the ordained time, so that if we understand where the abyss is, typically people would indicate that it's in the earth, but it's not in the earth in this dimension, right?
Okay.
It's in another dimension. So you've got AI that's being developed, and you've got quantum computing that's being developed that is working together so it can search multiple dimensions at the same time. I think it's being developed to find the abyss and to find the Atma particle that contains all the knowledge of the universe, invisible, that merges a particle and transmits that knowledge through quantum entanglement, which will provide part of the pieces to godhood, which is knowledge, and the other one is immortality. So they're going to have to offer some sort of physical immortality with new bodies, or with replacement parts, or transhumanism, however we're going to get there. So I think what's going on is that there's a number of people that would love to release these gods and fallen angels out of the abyss before the ordained time are going to try and do so.
Okay.
Biblically, in the Revelation, it's an angel that comes down from heaven with a key that unlocks them at a specific ordained time, and then they join the earth.
Okay, so
Some people say
kinda...
the angel falls from the heaven, so it's a fallen angel that does it. But typically in Revelation, it's anything that's involved with an angel in heaven is doing the beckoning of, what needs to happen in the end time. So it doesn't really matter to me whether it's a fallen angel or a righteous angel. And what's interesting is that you have a couple of accounts of Azazel being either put into the abyss or being put into the constellation Orion. And so if Azazel, who is Abaddon and Apollyon, is the one that falls, let's say, from Orion with a key to open the abyss as the king of the abyss and the leader of the host, that would make sense to me as well.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Most people don't know, but I mean, I can go really deep here and talk about certain things like how are they even, or how is this even being allowed to happen? How is the end times even being allowed to happen when there's an almighty being? But I'm not going to go there because I don't want to get too deep and get people too upset. But there's definitely a lot of things that I question and I wonder. But wow, you flipped, Gary. Your video is like sideways now. Hopefully you can fix that. But somebody asks in the chat, what's the difference between the Cog or the Gog War and Apollo 200 million man war? Make any sense to you? And yeah, I don't know what happened, Gary, but something happened to your camera. I can't hear you now. And you flipped. So let me take you. Yeah, see, you're sideways. You're almost upside down. I don't know. That's weird. I don't know how that happened. I'd like to at least hear you. I can't hear you. So we'll let Gary fix it. Nope, still don't hear you. I can't hear you. They can't hear you. But yeah, pop back in if you can. But yeah, very interesting question. I'm not quite sure what that means. Yeah, that was kind of weird that happened like that. But I most certainly, hopefully he'll be back in a second here, and I could pop him back in. But yeah, I can go very deep and dark. I did try my hardest with asking the questions, but Gary is very, very educated on this kind of religious Bible mythology stuff, and it's something I have to still read up on a little bit and get to know a little bit more. Hopefully, come on, Gary, let's get you back here. I got a couple more questions before you end up leaving here. It's funny that he talked about the gnomes too, because I should have brought up my gnome story, right? And I think I'll talk about it if he doesn't come back. And well, I'll start it, and if he comes back, we'll see what happens. Here he is. Let's see. Okay, so looks like you're back. Okay, are you back? And now what did I do? There we go. I still can't hear you though, Gary. Now I can.
Well, okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I had to get out and get back in for some reason. So
Okay,
the question was, is there a connection between Gog and the 200 million man war?
Yes. There you go.
So
yes.
there's
Sorry about that.
Of all the wars, there's two major wars. There's Armageddon, and there's this Gog war. So let me connect the dots. So Armageddon happens at the end of the last 7 years. From the chronology, in terms of how Revelation is laid out, the 200 million man war happens at the time of the opening of the abyss, which is before the midpoint, just before of the last 7 years. Antichrist comes to power midpoint of the last 7 years. The Gog War, which is Ezekiel 38 and 39, is Gog and Magog. And understand, Gog is not in any of the table of nations in terms of the descendants of Noah. In fact, Gog is a offspring of Iapetus, a Greek god. But Magog is in the table of nations. And so it's describing these nations. So it's Magog of Magog that is leading.
Yeah, it's your internet connection there, Gary. It's cutting out and in and out, in and out. You're sideways again. But your internet, yeah, it keeps cutting in and out. So you might have to leave again and come back. Do apologize, but yeah, it's the internet connection you got. Yeah, so he'll come back in a second. Hey, Space Herpes, what's going on? Takaho, Demboski, Cthulhu. Yeah, you guys are gremlins, I tell you, Hot Toddy says. I do want to thank all of you guys for being here. That's for sure. Good turnout for the show. I tried to get as research as much as I possibly can before he came on, because I knew it was going to be a tough show, and I am trying my best. That's for sure. I wanted him to get in and talk about the book really quick for a few minutes before we end. Overnight stream tonight, you guys, from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. is like every night. We got Johnny Dollar is tonight. Didn't get timestamps in there, so you guys will enjoy it just as much. Johnny Dollar is one of the favorites of the old time radio shows, so you guys will definitely enjoy that, and it will be fun. But Gary, pop back in just so you could talk about your book. We'll give it one last try. Get in here. We only got about 15 more minutes, Gary, so that's what we'll do. But yeah, I appreciate everybody being here. Blue Francis, make sure you guys all like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification. We are going to be doing this on a regular basis. I've got a couple other guests lined up already, and it's going to be, the one is a paranormal investigator, and I'm trying to get, like Gary, a little deep into some of these like mythos and mythology and stuff like that. I thought it was fun trying to get some information about vampires out there, right? So let me talk about my gnome story real quick, and if Gary pops in, then he can chime in a little bit there on that. But yeah, the gnome story. It's a good thing you brought that up, talking about the fairy folk and all that. I saw a gnome when I was young. I was about, I know, and people are gonna go like, "What are you talking about? You saw a gnome?" But you heard Gary. Gary was talking about it, The gnome story. I was 8, 9 years old. I was with my uncle. We were in the kitchen of this older house. Let me see if Gary's still there. Yeah, but try to put, here he comes. He's coming. We'll try this one more time, Gary. If I lose you, then yes, so be it. But it is your internet connection. It keeps going in and out, but it's okay. If we lose you, we lose you. I'll try to have you back on again. That's for sure.
I just
see, yeah. We lost you. I don't even know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah, but I can't hear you. You went sideways again. It's the weirdest thing. Let me turn you off and turn. Yeah, that's not going to work either. Put you out. Nope. Nothing's going to work there for you. It's not on my end, Gary. So, yeah. So the gnome story. Let me finish it. And that's sad. I mean, we were almost at the end of the show, and we could have got it in, but he can try again if he wants. I don't care. Keep trying, Gary. Keep trying. But the gnome story. Me and my uncle were in the back kitchen, playing a game we used to always play. We'd flick these quarters, and the closest to the wall, would win. It was just a fun game we would play. And there was all woods in the back, so it was a perfect spot for like country, for something like that to happen. Perfect spot for gnomes. Well, not hobbits. Hobbits need a bigger realm. But anyways, the gnome that we saw, we looked over at the bathroom, which was off to the left side of us, and we saw what was maybe an 8-inch figure of a gnome, and it was in the typical gnome garb. That was the green hat, okay, or was it the red hat? No, the red hat, pointed hat, and the green. How a gnome looks, like in the cartoons and stuff like that. So we saw it. It poked its head out. I saw it first. I told my uncle. I said, "Did you see that? What the heck was that?" And he was joking. He goes, "Yeah, they're always out there." Yeah. Kurt White was timed out. What's going on there, Kurt White? We got do your. Yeah. See, I mean, people got to be a little less dramatic about things. I mean, come on. It's people can talk about stuff. It's a thing that people can do. Have a civil discussion. But over to the left, I told him, and he's like, "What?" And he looked over, he didn't see nothing. So the next thing happened was it popped its head back out and ran around. So we're going to try this one more time. Okay. Let's hope. Fingers crossed, Gary. Let's hurry up and get this through. Let's.
Yeah.
Okay. I was talking about my gnome story, and nevertheless, I saw a gnome. So, and it looked, Gary, just like gnomes are supposed to look. It was 7 inches tall. I was 8 years old, and we were in a country house, and I saw a gnome. And to this day, it's plain as day that I've seen it. So it was a paranormal experience that I like to tell sometimes, because in my mind, it really happened. But you question it as an adult, you know what I mean? So whatever. But,
yeah, I think you probably saw one.
There you go. I'm telling you, it was solid. It was 8 inches tall. I've seen it. But anyways, where were we?
We were talking about the Gog War and the 200 Million Man War. So
okay, and then we'll get to your book. So go ahead.
Right. So the war happens as a counterfeit Armageddon, the 200 Million Man War out of Revelation 9. Okay. And it is a counterfeit Armageddon. It is the same timing as the Gog War of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And we know that because it happens in the last days, and it happens before second Exodus, which happens in the second half of the last 7 years. The creatures that are being described that are these really advanced hybrid organic type of weaponry of the war. We haven't quite got there yet in that technology, at least that's been revealed to us, but we're getting there. It is the same creatures that are described in Joel 1 and 2. So Revelation 9, 200 Million Man War, Joel 1 and 2, and Ezekiel 38 and 39 are the same war. Joel 3 is the Armageddon War in that set of prophecies. And so this is the counterfeit Armageddon that Antichrist is going to require for his Armageddon as pedigree and credibility to be the Messiah that he's going to portray him to be, but about 3.5 years before Armageddon. And the timing makes sense, because after that, as talked about in the book of Daniel and in the book of Luke, he surrounds Jerusalem with the armies and sets up the abomination and is crowned the king of Jerusalem in Jerusalem at that point in time, and promises peace and safety.
Huh. Okay. Very interesting. So there's your answer, you guys, to that question. Let's quickly, because we got about 10 minutes here. Let's talk about your book really quick, because I know you're working on another one, right?
Mm-hmm. I am.
Okay. So quickly, Genesis 6 Conspiracy. It's been out a while. Is it still doing good?
It's still selling as well as it did right from the first year on. So it's very consistent in its sales. Wow. And continues to go. And I thought, I said I would never write a sequel to the Genesis 6 Conspiracy. Okay. But from a lot of the people who follow me, They want more information as to how does prehistory connect with the end time, and how understanding prehistory helps you to understand end time prophecy. And they also wanted to hear more about how much more is said about angels and giants in the Bible, because if you're a Christian, it's not taught in church, either prehistory or prophecy.
Right.
And there's just so much more in there. And then I'll do a little bit of adding in out of things that are outside the Bible, whether it's from the Ugaritic text or whatever I need to do to sort of add on to it. Whereas the Genesis 6 conspiracy, it is taking sources from all around the world and sort of melding them in and telling the same story in prehistory and history and what will come about in the end time. So it's a sequel, but it's not redundant. It's mostly all new information in the new book, and it's very, very detailed.
Okay, but
And I'll be talking about the different kinds of Nephilim in there too.
Okay. And when's that supposed to be out?
I'm still working on it, so I'm on chapter 45 right now. So it's going to be a fairly good sized book again, yeah, as opposed to the 98 chapters in the first book, but it won't be quite that big. I'm hoping to have it in the publisher's hands in the first quarter and out before summer.
Okay, yeah, and like I said, the first book, the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, it's 93 chapters. It's a big book. If you want to, dig deep and go into all of this stuff with Gary and read it, go buy it. Get it from Amazon. The link is down there. It's very interesting. As the cat sneaks through, go on, cat. So yeah. So where is the best place to follow you so that they can keep up with what you're doing? Is it following you on Facebook? You got a website?
Yeah, Facebook is the best place to follow me. I've kind of reduced my social media until I can see where to go, where it's not as difficult to talk about things. And if you can also get a hold of me through my website as well. There's a contact the author there. So that if you wanted, for example, some information on the Gog War that we talked about, I've got some documents on that. If you wanted to know about those scorpion beings out of Revelation 9, I've got documents on that. I got a 3-part series on the dog Nephilim. I've got a document on the lion Nephilim and the Tengu, which are the bird Nephilim, which are kind of like the Anunnaki offspring. And so I got a lot of documents. If you name a topic, you're looking for more information, just name the topic. If I got it, I'll send it to you, and or you can just ask me a question.
Okay, and the website address is, because I don't think I put
the
that.
Genesis6conspiracy.com. That's Genesis 6 with the number 6conspiracy.com. It may take me a couple weeks to get back to you, but I will get back to you.
Okay, and a few more minutes. So Brooke has a question in the chat. She says, "What is the abomination?"
The abomination is the setting up of the idol in the temple and the worship of Antichrist in the temple. So you've got two things going on there. So there's got to be a temple that's going to be rebuilt, which is part of the end time that has to be done. It's on a wing of probably the existing temple. So you're going to have a universal religion to have that. And so in Revelation 13, we get this image that is set up that causes everybody to worship or to be killed by the image. And you can't buy or sell without the AI and all of the technical stuff that's going to be linked into this. So it's a combination of that. And I think the third part of it is he's pronounces himself, at least according to the bloodlines, as the King of Jerusalem through genealogical inheritance. Okay,
very good. And Coachella Valley, again, he's bringing up the Gog thing. Is Apollo and Gog one and the same then? Love your book.
No, they're different. So when the word that is connected to Apollo, and Apollo is a part of a series of Greek words that includes Apollyon, which is the name for Abaddon. It's Hebrew Abaddon, Greek Apollyon, who I think is Azazel. And Antichrist is the son of perdition. And perdition goes back to a Greek word that is in the same series and is rooted in Apollyon. So you almost get a connection there that Antichrist will have a bloodline that comes back down through Apollyon or Apollo. And Apollo's is technically a different god than Apollyon, but it's part of the same set of words.
Okay, very good. Okay, so yeah, we're at an hour and a half. That's where I keep most of my shows now because we have our overnight streams as always for a year here. If you dig the old time radio shows and mystery and suspense and detective shows and all that good stuff, Johnny Dollar tonight overnight for 12 hours all night long. So you're going to have some joy. With that said, I'd like to ask you one last time, Gary, is there a vampire in the truest sense on the planet right now?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. Yeah.
Okay.
I would.
There you go.
Well, and I think you've got not only vampires from sort of an occult religious perspective, but I also think that you've got people who are pure bloodlines that are drinking the blood. And I would not be surprised if there was one of those other kinds of creatures that would have attack humans and drink their blood as well.
Okay. And I think with the whole new audience that I got here, if you would, one of these days come back and let's go over again the secret societies. I think people would be really interested in hearing that.
It is so important to understand, people get so much misinformation, and to understand the secret societies, you have to understand the hierarchy and how the royal bloodlines fit in. Because, you talk to one person and they say it's the Illuminati, that's the most important. Some people will say the Jesuits, some people will say Freemasonry, some people will say the Rosicrucians, and the list sort of goes on and on and on. And they're all separate organizations that are working together, but you need to understand that hierarchy, and it's a great show to have. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I do remember last time when we talked, and it was a fantastic show. So and that was a while ago. So I'm gonna go now, you guys. I'm gonna bid farewell until I see you guys in the chat for Johnny Dollar tonight. I will see you all there. And Gary, hold on for 2 minutes. I'm going to let my outro go, and then I want to talk to you after I end the stream, just for a couple minutes, and then I'll let you go. Thank you all for joining. The thumbs up. Thank Gary. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Okay.